Do you think the insert's working? I feel like the insert's not working. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick Murphy. I'm one half of the Brothers Murphy, and this is going to be another tier list of a board game shelf. Today, we're going to be talking about this shelf right here. And real quick, before I forget, this shelf is done by Slackfish. It's called the Shelf of Slack. That is who sponsored this shelf. Thank you so much, Slackfish. And they chose for Space Base on here because they love Space Base. So, we're going to be tier listing this shelf. We've done a couple of these videos in the past. Also want to apologize. I am getting over being sick and losing my voice, and so that's why I sound a little bit weird. My apologies for that. But if you don't know what a tier list is, a tier list looks like this, and it is usually 5 different categories. There's D tier, which is the lowest, then C, B, A, and then S tier is the highest tier. And S stands for special or stupendous or really kind of whatever you want S to stand for. And so the problem with a tier listing is D tier tends to be like bad or just generally not very good, and S tier is like absolutely outstanding. The problem is we just culled 150 games from our collection, and any honest to God D tier or even really C tier list games have pretty much gone away because why would we keep them, right? And so we were kind of in this conversation of like, do we keep doing the tier listing even though we just started this series? Because how does that really work? Now, the thing about a tier list is more about comparing things within that list. So even if I do really like a game, it could still be like a D tier game, but I don't really want to say a game is a D tier game because it sounds very negative. And really, honestly, most games are not D tier. Almost every single game out there is at least fine. So we're going to change the tier list, or rather we're going to change what the rankings are called. So now the D tier is now going to be called, it's fine. Because really, like, there's going to be a couple games in our collection. We're kind of like, it's fine, but we keep it for these various reasons. But, it's fine. It's now going to be our D tier. Our C tier is going to be, it's a good little game. Good little game. Just, it's not great, but it's good. It's good just there. And then there's going to be great little game, or just a great game. That's kind of the B tier, the middle of the road B tier. And then above great and A tier is going to be a banger. That game is an absolute banger. And then what's the S tier? What's better than a banger? Well, we're going to call our S tier Dum Dum Fuego Fire because we're the Brothers Murph and we're ridiculous. So if you don't understand Murph talk, Dum Dum Fuego Fire stands for like the cream of the crop, the best, our favorite games of all time. Cool? All right, let's get right into it. Okay, so we're going over this shelf right here. So we'll start talking about this now at this point, big boy. It wasn't a very big box before, and this is Space Base, or Space Bass as we correctly pronounce it. Space Base is great. Honestly, we played this again more recently, and it reminded me how much I like Space Base because we had played it a whole bunch when we first got it, and then we kind of stopped playing it for a little while. Space Base is a quick little engine builder game where you are building out a space port, essentially, and you are getting these ship cards. These ship cards will have different things on them, and you're putting them in your spaceport. Every turn, someone will roll you'll roll dice on your turn, and then your ships are labeled 1 through 12. And so if I roll a 3 and a 4, I can activate my 3 ship, my 4 ship, my 3 ship, and my 4 ship, or my 7 ship. So the ones that are higher values tend to be a lot more powerful because they're harder to activate. So very, very cool, very simple. Mostly what you're going to be getting is you're going to be getting money. Money is how you buy more of these ships. You can get income, which essentially is your baseline of money. So if you increase your income, your money can only ever go back a certain amount. And then you can get points. The first person to get to 40 points triggers the end of the game. Most points wins. So Space Base is really, really fun because one thing that's really nice about Space Base is there's basically no downtime because every time you buy new ships, they go into that slot because each ship has a specific slot it goes into, like 7 or 6 or something like that. So the problem is there's already a ship there. So what happens to the ship there? Well, that ship goes out, the new ship goes in, and then the old ship now flips upside down and tucks behind your board because every single card has a little red area, and that red area triggers on other people's turns. So if then on Mike's turn, Mike rolls a 3 and a 4, I then look at the back of my board. What's tucked behind my board? If I have a 3 and a 4, I can trigger those 3s and 4s. If I have a 7, I can trigger that 7. So the cool thing is on other people's turns, you're always paying attention to what's happening because you're constantly getting to trigger your own cards again. And so you could really build these big engines on other people's turns. And then by the time it gets back around to your turn, you might have collected points, you might have collected money. It's really, really fun. There's 3 tiers of cards, level 1, 2, and 3. Level 3s are obviously better than level 1s. It's just a smooth engine builder that's really, really good. But we had kind of played it out. I feel like we played it a whole bunch, and then we kind of stopped for a while, and I was like, okay, I think I might be done with Space Base. And then we were actually over at John D. Claire's house, who made this game. And yeah, we're friends with John D. Claire. I'll say it, I've touched his face. Deal with it. We're at his place, and he wanted to play Space Base. So we actually played Space Base with John D. Claire, and I'll tell you right now, he's really good at the game. Makes sense, he designed it and all, but like he kicked our asses so hard. It was astonishing how good he was at the game. But so we played at his place, and I was like, man, I've forgotten. At that point, it probably been like a year and a half since we played. I was like, wow, I forgot how much I like this game. Then we played it again recently. We played with some of the Shy Pluto stuff, some of the expansion stuff. It's so much fun, and it kind of like, oh yeah, that's right. Space Base is absolutely incredible. I'm gonna have this into the banger category. It's not quite into Dum Dum Fuego Fire because it has gone down a little bit, but as a quick engine builder with basically no downtime, I still think it's absolutely outstanding. One thing that I would love to see is, I texted you, no? One thing that I would love to see with Space Base, and we've actually talked to John about this, is like I would love to see like what we say like a Target version of it, like a Space Base Express. Because one thing I will knock on Space Base is some of the cards just get confusing because you have these charges you put on the card, and then you have to like charge the card up and then get rid of those charges to use it. And honestly, I wish there was a version that just got rid of all of those and just had like simple cards, like simple. You activate this card, it gives you this. You activate this card, it gives you this. I honestly think I would like that version better because sure, the complexity and the strategy is bigger in the full version. But honestly, a lot of times when I play Space Base, I just want to chill and play it. And so I would love to see like a Space Base Express version. I think that'd be cool. Space Base is an absolute banger though. Love it, love it, love it. John D. Claire makes great games, if you didn't know. Next up is Destinies. This is just the Destinies base game. I'm gonna say right now, this is gonna go into the it's fine. Mostly because we haven't played it. Any games we haven't played are always going to go in the it's fine category because we don't know if they're great. But I will say the reason why it's fine is the lowest category is because here's the thing. Nowadays, be real with yourself. There are very, very, very few bad games. There's almost none. They're all at least fine. The thing about nowadays is there's so many absolutely great games that we're just kind of spoiled at this point. Destinies, though, I've heard is a very, very good. This is a competitive, story-driven game. Lucky Duck Games, who sponsors the channel. Thank you, Lucky Duck Games. This is a game that is run by an app, or is app-assisted, and it has a big, big story. There's a lot of these kinds of games that they've done. They did like the Dark Quarter, which we've played, which is not the exact same game, but kind of similar in some ways. Really, really heavily story-driven games where you're solving stuff, you're doing really cool stuff. I have heard so many amazing things about Destinies. We actually have a bunch of stuff for Destinies, and we've been trying to work out a time to play it for Lucky Duck. We just haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I do really want to play Destinies. I will say this about it. I don't think it's going to go above, for me, and this is for me specifically, and specifically me, not necessarily Mike. For me, I don't think it'll ever really go above it's a good little game, because I don't really like story-driven games that much. In my head, I like story-driven games a lot. Like, I like the concept of story-driven games a lot, but I actually don't love playing them very much. I'm in that way a lot of ways. Like, I like the concept of story-driven video games, but actually, I don't really want to play story-driven video games. I don't really care about the story in a video game. I just want to play a good video game. It's one of the reasons why, like, my favorite game is Super Mario Odyssey, right? And one thing is, like, is there a story in that game? I mean, sure, but I just like the movement in that game. I think it's really great. It's the best game ever made. It's amazing. And so it's one of those things where, like, I just don't, when I play Stardew Valley, I just build cool, big, efficient farms. I never talk to the townsfolk because I just don't really care about the story in the game. And that follows through with board games too. So story driven, like if there's a story in a game, cool. But a story like driven game is just not really for me. Now, again, a game like Destinies, I can really appreciate these kinds of games. We played Dark Quarter and I was like, wow, this is really cool, and I can see how people will love this. We were talking to our good friend Paula, and she loves story-driven games. So she was watching us play Dark Horde, and she's like, man, I want to play that so bad, because that is like so right up her alley. And I was like, this is great for like other people, basically, because I was like, this is really cool. And I can acknowledge that this is cool, but I can also acknowledge that it's just not for me. Because you can say that. You can also, by the way, I just want to give you all permission. You can acknowledge that a game is great for other people, even if you don't personally like it. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's a bad game. Destinies, though, I'm sure is outstanding. I'm sure I'll be like, this is cool when I play it, but I won't actually want to play it very often because I just don't really love story-driven games. But Destiny's gonna go to the fine, because I know for a fact it's at least fine. And yeah, it's a good one, and I'm excited to try it because I do want to check it out, and I know people freaking love Destinies. They keep making stuff for it. It's very, very popular. I'm gonna take a sip of tea. You can hear my voice going out real quick. All right, next up is Downforce, a game we've talked, it's gonna be a really heavy one. Oh my God, there's so many maps in this. It's just all cardboard. Downforce. Downforce is a really cool racing game. Well, it's not really a racing game because you don't really care. Well, you do care if your car comes in first. What it comes down to is ultimately a bidding game where you are car owners. You own these Formula One cars, and you are throughout the race betting on who you think is going to win, which car, and you do not have to bet on yourself. If the red car is crushing it, but you own the orange car, you're kind of like, screw the orange car, I'm betting on the red car. Now, you do get money for your car coming in like first, second, third, or fourth, something like that, but you also get money for betting. And so you don't have to bet on yourself, which I think is a very fun concept. And on your turn, you're gonna be playing out these speed cards, and these speed cards are gonna have different cars on them, and these cards are gonna move a certain amount, and you activate the card from top to bottom. So it might be like red 6, black 5, yellow 4, green 1. And so in that case, you're gonna move red 6, and then black 5, and then 4, and then 1. And so you're constantly having to move everyone else's cars, which I actually find to be very interesting in like a race type game, being like, hey, you're trying to manipulate this, but you have to move this car unless you can do something like bottleneck it. And sometimes you're strategically bottlenecking other cars so that this stops, so that the car you're betting on goes ahead. I really, really like Downforce. It's really great. There's like 6 different maps because the base game comes with 2 different maps, and then there's, I think, 2 expansions. So there's essentially 6, is it 2? I think so. There's essentially 6 maps for it, which is great. And there's more powers. Every car also gets a special power. It's really, really fun. I really like Downforce. Somebody asked me recently, do you think you'll like Downforce or Heat more? I think I would like Heat more because Heat is more of an actual racing game where you have a car, you're really choosing where that car is going, like playing cards for that car. This one, you're car owners and you're constantly moving everything. So it feels like a racing game, but kind of not really at the same time. It feels more in the vein of like Camel Up, where you don't really own one of the camels. You're just betting on which camel you think is gonna win. And I really would like Downforce. I'm gonna put Downforce in the great game category. It's not any higher because I have cooled on it a little bit, not a ton. But the main reason why I've cooled on, if you want to put it that way, is because I only ever want to play Downforce at 6 players. It's great at other player counts, but it is by far the best at 6 because you're always going to play with all 6 cars. So in a 6-player game, everyone has 1 car. In any other player count, at least one player is going to have 2 cars, which works fine. It's not like it doesn't work that way. It does, but it just makes things kind of odd and a little bit confusing, and it's just more fun when everyone has their own car. And so I really, really like Downforce, but I really only want to play it at 6. And so basically we only ever get to play it at conventions, and we just don't play it very often anymore. But I still do really, really like it. I still think it's a great game, especially once you get like a couple different maps, a whole bunch of different player powers. It's just so easy. It's so simple. You can teach this game so quickly to people. It just works well. I think it looks really good. I really like Downforce. I think it's outstanding. It's just cooled a little bit, mostly because I want to play it in such a specific time, in such a specific player count, that it just kind of makes it go down from a banger. And so it's still a great game, really, really fun game, really like it, and it's heavy as heck because there's like, now I'm doubting myself. How many maps are there? It's 3, isn't it? Hold on, now I have to know. Now I have to know. Is there more expansions than I thought? 1, 2, 3. I was right. You were right, Nick. Trust your instincts. Alrighty, next up is a board and dice game, Origins First Builders. So, This is a very cool game that has, I think, one of the coolest themes in all of board games. This is a game where you are building up civilization, as Board and Dice generally does. You're building up civilization, pyramids, stuff. You might notice there is some weird stuff going on with these pyramids. There's some weird blue glowy stuff, some big old giant like tesseract looking cube right there. Well, that is because in this game, there are aliens, and the aliens are coming to help build these giant monuments. This game basically gives into that conspiracy theory that aliens built the pyramids, that aliens built all these big old monuments, because they're like, there's no way that humans could have done this with their primitive technology and stuff like that. It's like they did. It's just a lot of work, a lot of work. But nonetheless, this game leans into that. And so in this game, you are drafting, using dice and going to like these motherships, and these motherships are just kind of like little dials at the top of the board, and those dials will have different pip values on them, so you can only put a die there of that pip value, and then you get to do the action that's above it. And then if you match the die color to the mothership color, you get to do a little bit of a bonus action. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. You are building out essentially kind of like a little district of these little hexamino tiles that are essentially going to give you bonuses, kind of actions that you can activate. And so you're building up that little district. You're going up these different tracks. You're going up this kind of like, what is this? Like a Coliseum track? What is it actually? But basically you're trying to get fans and all this kind of stuff. And it's got a whole bunch of stuff. You're trying to like upgrade your stuff and unlock different dice. And it's just is a lot going on. And it's really, really cool. My main problem with Origins is it's a board and dice game, and I love board and dice game. That's not the problem. The problem with board and dice is their games have no theme, and they have a theme on them, but all of their themes are always just pasted on. All of their T-series games like Teotihuacan, Tuatansuyu, all these things, really great games, but the theme is just there. The game does not integrate that theme into the mechanics at all. Now, granted, Board and Dice always does that. That's not really a knock on them, because again, talking about, I don't really care about stories in games. I'm here for the mechanics. I love cool themes, but I'm not necessarily like really, really bummed out if a theme isn't integrated in the mechanics, usually. In this case though, I actually am. I think this is one of the funnest, coolest themes in any board game. A civilization-themed game, but where there's aliens, and aliens are helping you like build Colossus and all this kind of stuff. I think that's such a cool theme. When I heard about it, I was like, that is one of the coolest themes I've ever heard of in my entire life, and I want to play it so bad. And it's just there. It's just there, and not only that, most of the art is on those hex tiles that you're putting out, and that's where you're seeing them building the pyramids, all this kind of stuff. But the art on it is like this big. It's tiny, and so it's basically just not even there. And the rest of it is kind of like classic board and dice, relatively beige, not super, super colorful, kind of like abstracted, you know, just typical board and dice stuff. And again, this is par for the course for them. But in this case, I really, really wanted it to feel like I was getting help from the aliens, I guess. I wanted more integration with the themes and the mechanics. I wanted them to be more meshed, and they're just really not. The theme is just pasted on there like it is for many other things, and that's okay generally. But for this one particularly, I was like, I want to feel like an alien, and I want to feel like they're helping us out. And it just didn't. And at the very, very least, I wish the art was more prominent on all these things. I wish the hexes were bigger so we could see the art, because then at least I can immerse myself that way. I can be like, oh, this is cool. Like when it's not my turn, I can be looking at the art and be like, oh, cool, cool, cool. They're helping build like, I don't know, the Great Wall of China or whatever. It's like, oh, that's cool. You can see they're bringing this down. Okay, okay. And it's just not even really there. The rest of the game mechanically is very, very fun. I think it's great. I think the mothership and how you put down it works really, really well, but it just really bums me out that the theme is just pasted on. So much so that it's honestly hampered my enjoyment of the game a little bit. To the point where I'm gonna put this in, good little game. It's a good game. I think the thing that keeps it from being a great game or even a banger is the fact that the theme is just not integrated at all, or at least the art isn't that integrated. And I wish it was more, because I think it's a really cool game that just squanders a really cool theme a little bit. And so I really like Origins a lot. Still a good game. Still would play it at any point. We obviously still have it. It made it through our cull, so obviously we still really enjoy it. but I want that theme to come through a little bit better. And it just doesn't. It just doesn't, unfortunately. But a good game nonetheless. Now we're getting to Chai. That's not a good sound. You hear that? Oh, that's bad. Do you think the insert's working? I feel like the insert's not working. That's gonna be rough. Oh man. All right, Chai. Chai is great. Chai is a cool game. This is a great, we talk about this a lot. Wow, it's so loud. We talk about this a lot, where Chai is a great game to introduce to new people because it is pretty darn simple. There's not too much going on, but it's gorgeous. And we have the deluxe version with all those things like metal coins, the cool kind of like cups that they have in there. Really cool. And this is a great game to introduce new people to, because not only is the game simple to something they can pick up, but it also has that kind of like wow factor. And I do think having a wow factor to new gamers is important. I don't think you should introduce new gamers to like Castles of Burgundy, maybe the really new one because it's big and crazy looking, but the old Castle of Burgundy, don't. It looks like trash because it's just beige, it's nothing. And again, unless those people are gonna be super into the mechanics, I do think having a good looking game and a game with a little bit of like, whoa, a little production value, a little flair going on, I do think is very helpful. In Chai, you are running a little tea shop and you are gathering different tea leaves and different accoutrements. You're getting like milk and sugar and vanilla and stuff like that. And you're essentially just doing tea orders. People have specific teas they want, specific additions they want, like milk and things like that. When you fulfill their order, you get to take that customer, you're gonna get a certain amount of points. Harder customers are worth more points and stuff like that. And it's got this really cool way of gathering resources. So when you're gathering tea tiles, you essentially pay a certain amount of money depending on where they are, and you can take all the tea tiles that are touching each other. It's in this little grid, they're all square tiles. And so if it's like green tea, green tea, green tea, you can take all three of those because they're all touching each other. But then all of them then slide down and then you can make another purchase if you want to. So much of the game is like, okay, I'm gonna take this one berry tea out of here. These are gonna slide down and now I got a whole bunch of this other kind of tea all together. So now I'm gonna grab all this black tea and then put it over here. So I really like that. I think it's a really fun little puzzle that everyone can understand pretty easily, but it's still very satisfying and cool. And I really like Chai. I will say we don't play it quite as much anymore. And there was a game, what was it? There was a game recently that we were talking about, like this kind of is replacing Chai as our go-to like overproduced, cool game that you can play with new people. Okay, I had to go ask Mike what the other game we were talking about was because I couldn't remember. So, a game that's kind of replaced Chai as this gateway game that's like super overproduced, super pretty, and simple enough for people to get is probably Flamecraft for us. We really like Flamecraft a lot. It's very cute, very overproduced, but a little bit simpler. Chai has some interesting stuff where there's these kind of like special actions that you can activate occasionally, and then they're constantly like switching out through the games, and that part always gets a little bit confusing for newer people. And I still love Chai. Chai is still great. And I do think it'll stick around for a while, but if we're doing, this was kind of always a game that we would introduce to new people because we're like, wow, it's so cute. It looks so good. The production is great and it's simple enough for them to get. But I think our go-to game for that is now going to be Flamecraft, probably over Chai. And I really like Chai Tea for 2, which we have. It's on a different shelf over there because it's a little bit heavier and probably just a little bit easier to get to the table because it's not quite as big. And there's also things like that. And so Chai is still good. I'm putting it in the great category. I still think it's a great game. It might move down to a good little game sometime soon. I still like Chai, but we've kind of found something that kind of replaced it for us at least. It's still really good though. But yeah, it's a good game. Great to teach new people too because it goes over well. And I do think that high production value, high art is a good way to get people in the hobby. Again, don't introduce them to bad looking games. Introduce those games once they're hooked. We're trying to get more people in the hobby. Hook them with something pretty and then show them something ugly. That's a really good mechanic. But don't start with that, please. My gosh. All right, next up, Small World. Had this game for a while, a long time. Gosh, this was one of the first games we ever got, and it keeps making it through different culls, which is actually kind of surprising because we have not played this game in a very long time, and we definitely have other like area control games and stuff that we like more than it. But this is a very simple area control game. It's very straightforward, where there's a map. On the map are different terrain types like swamps and mountains and stuff. And then everyone will have a fantasy race, like big old trolls and like, dwarves and halflings and stuff. And then each race will have a special power or some land type that they specifically like the most. And then they will be paired with a random special power. So it could be like flying. And so you could have like flying wizards or like swamp dwarves or like mountain, all these different kinds of abilities that can go on, and they're just randomly put together. And then you're going to be essentially getting these fantasy races with their abilities, and you're just moving out onto the map, just straight up pure area control and nothing else. And that's all it is. And it's great for that. And I think it's one of the reasons why we kept it on, because it's still a very good, intro to area control, because all the races and the combinations of powers you can kind of explain as they're coming out, so you don't need to do it all right away, which is nice, because any game that you can kind of teach as you go is always really, really nice. And it's just a fun, silly concept. Like, oh, these are like, I don't know, Dragon Master trolls. Cool. And so it's just like these really weird, funny combinations. And what's fun about the game is eventually you'll push out your fantasy race as far as they can go. They've extended themselves. You only have a certain amount of troops, and you're done. You kind of have to, you're done. You can't go any farther. And so you can actually have your race go into decline. You'll flip them all over. They're still on the table. And then your next turn, you will grab a new race with a new ability. And then you come onto the board again. And so it's this really cool, fun way to be like, this is all my flying trolls could do. They're now in decline. I'm now grabbing these swamp wizards. Okay, boom, we're going through and doing this now. Really, really fun. It's just so darn enjoyable. I really, really like it. It just keeps sticking around through culls, even though we basically never play it anymore. I really, really like it. I just think it's it's just a pure, not workable, it's a pure area control game that just works. It just works. It's been around for a long time for a reason, and it just works. I absolutely love Small World. And someday we will probably cull it. But that year was not this year, and honestly, it probably won't be next year either. It's just really, really fun. And honestly, again, it's a good intro to area control. It's still one of the better ones. It's still just absolutely great. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't rank this one. We're gonna put this into the, gosh. For me, it's in between good little game and great little game. I think I'm gonna put it in the good little game category, because we have played it through. We've played it enough. No. Let's put it in the great. We're going to put it in the great category. It's a great game, because it's a great game, and it's good to introduce people to. So we're keeping it there. All right, it's a great game. Now on to last game of this shelf is going to be Clans of Caledonia. Clans of Caledonia is a game where you're in the Scottish Highlands, and it's kind of an economic game where you are building out kind of different industries, essentially, out onto the Scottish Highland. You can put out like cows. Cows will give you milk. You can put out a little cheese factory, and that will turn that milk into cheese. You can get wheat out there, wheat fields, and you can put out bread factories, which turn the wheat into bread and stuff like that. And you're trying to fulfill contracts. The contracts will want those different things. And so you are trying to put them out on the board. At the end of every round, all of your pieces on the board will essentially activate and give you the good that they have. So sheep give you wool, cows give you milk. Again, you can turn milk into cheese. Wheat fields give you wheat, which you can turn into whiskey, or you can turn into bread. And then the things you have to turn stuff into are obviously worth more. So those contracts will be worth more as well. And you can do some trading. There's kind of like a stock board, which is always kind of interesting in this game, because it doesn't seem like it would have it. Basically, you can like buy stuff straight up. You can send your merchants out to the store essentially and get them. But then as the demand goes up, the price goes up. As you can sell stuff, flood the market, the price will go down. Really fun game. It's just, this game freaking works. Everyone can get their own clans member, which has a special power. So you have a little bit of special power, which is so cool. But this game, just, it was my number 3 game of all time. So this game is going to the Dum Dum Fuego Fire, the only one of this list that went to Dum Dum Fuego Fire, because, man, it's just so good. It's hard to describe why this game is so much fun. I don't entirely know how to describe it. It just works. It's just so smooth. Everything you're doing costs money, and so you're having to manage your money, and that's really, really tough. And you're trying to get as much stuff out as possible and trying to link them all together, because the more links you have across like bodies of water and stuff is better. And so there's like all these different things you're thinking about, and it's just this really cool economic game that looks like a farming game. Like, it looks like an Uwe Rosenberg farming game. It's got Clemens Franz art and stuff like that, but it's really not. It's an economic game, and it's just so cool. And in the beginning of the game, getting contracts is much easier. You actually get paid to take contracts, but they're harder to fulfill. And later in the game, where they're easier to fulfill, they start costing money. They start costing a ton of money. So in the last round, where you're like, man, I could probably fulfill a couple contracts, it's gonna cost you like 15 bucks each, which is a lot of money. And so you're like, oh my gosh, how many can I actually afford? And it's just so much fun. And it just works so well. It's my number 3 game of all time. This is one of those games that absolutely blew my mind in terms of how much I liked it when we played it. And I believe there's an expansion coming out for it like this year. We always talk about this game's a huge flex because the box is like tiny and there's been no expansions. The game came out, it really seemed like the designer was just like, yep, this is it. The game's done. I don't need anything else for it. And we were like, what a flex in an industry where everything is all about trying to make expansions for games to make more money off of them, which makes sense from a business standpoint, right? This was just like, nope, this is it. It's this size box. It's done. It's perfect. And I'm like, you're right. It is perfect. Although now apparently there is an expansion coming out and a new printing of it. And so I'm not going to lie, I'm also excited for that because I do love Clans of Caledonia. This is the only one going in the Dum Dum Fuego Fire category because it's so freaking good. There's just not really a way to put it otherwise. It's my 3rd favorite game of all time. I really, really enjoy it. It's just, I don't even have words for how good it is. It's absolutely outstanding. As you can see, the shelf of Slack here is empty, and that means we are done for this tier list right here. Excuse me. I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you for dealing with my voice. I know I constantly am having to do just pushing through and coughing a bunch and stuff. We're trying to push through even though I've been not feeling so great. And so what do you think of these games? Let me know down in the comments below. Where would you rank them in a tier list from fine to Dum Dum Fuego Fire? This was an interesting one. This was a lot of just like good games, but like one Dum Dum Fuego Fire, one banger, and the rest kind of in the middle there. Ultimately a good list. Again, we culled 152 games, which means every single game we have is honestly pretty darn great. And so it's fun to kind of look at these in this way. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you later. Bye.